Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode at Lore Health and Wellness. I have the esteemed pleasure of introducing Belyne, who is our therapist here. And she's going to dive deeper into the relationship of trauma and food, obesity, diabetes, and all the things related to health and wellness. So, Belyne, tell us more about yourself.
So, very, very nice to be here with you. Yay. So I have been a therapist for almost 40 years. And I like working with people to make a difference in their life, a positive difference in their life. And we live in such a society where we're stressed out every day. And believe it or not, people just recognize grief as being when someone has passed away.
Yeah.
But that is not it. We suffer grief almost every day. And so I decided to go back to school to get my certification in grief and trauma therapy. So therefore I can, help everyday people with everyday problems and with stressors in life that affect our body as a whole.
Yes, yes. So one of the things that I love about our collaboration is that, being a family nurse practitioner, like I've always told you guys before, I know a little bit about a lot of things, but I do not specialize in that piece. And what I noticed with doing a lot of the weight loss and the obesity medicine, diabetes, and chronic diseases, especially within communities of color, there was some trauma that was there.
Right.
And so I wanted to make sure that we got to that root cause, because I noticed that if we did not address that root cause, they truly couldn't become their happiest, healthiest versions of themselves.
Exactly.
So, can you kind of elaborate about what that looks like in terms of weight loss and obesity and all that?
Well, Tammy, a lot of times what I come across, and I have actually experienced this myself as well, growing up in a minority family, we are subjected to a lot of challenges. And with those challenges, it becomes normal for us to just deal with it. As Black women, we are basically, kind of taught to be super women, right?
Yeah.
So, we have grief, we have trauma, you have those things that have happened to you. Maybe there's been some molestation in your past, or, maybe there was even some neglect or some abuse, or maybe, you just had someone just always feed you negativity. All of those things create trauma in our lives, but we don't recognize that because we just keep moving.
Yeah.
Big Mama says, girl, stop that crying. Go on over there and go take care of, whatever it is, And so we ignore those things that eventually later on in our lives, it affects our mind and our body.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's how people develop food addictions. And I myself was one of those persons, and I was a chubby kid because how I dealt with a lot of, my challenges is with food. Food soothed me.
Yeah.
And my mother was a young mom. She and my father got married young. So, all she knew was, she cooked. She cooked for me. If I was sad, she made me a cake,
Yeah.
And so we learned those bad habits, and those habits are not easy to break.
Yes.
Because it starts from here. And, yes, we have a number of different tools now with the semaglutide, trizepatide, all of those things to help us.
Yeah.
But if we do not take care of breaking down what's in our mind and how we think about food, what our relationship is to food, then, yes, we'll lose the weight, but then it'll come right back. That's why, you hear people say, oh, I lost 50 pounds, but then I gained 60 back.
Right.
Well, it's because we didn't really deal with it on the level that we needed to deal with it on. And that's dealing with things, in your mind and your mental health, mental health is extremely important.
It is.
And we're just now getting on the bandwagon to understand and realize how important it is.
Yes. Yes. I love everything that you said. And I think there's something to be said about communities of color and how we have dealt with mental health in the past. You know, there may have been times when you were younger that you had someone in your family that was saying certain things and it was just like, oh, well, they're crazy.
Right.
You know, oh, well, they didn't pray or they didn't do this. And it was always something that that person did not do. Right. And so we didn't learn the proper tools. And some of the other things, you know, Black boys don't cry.
Right.
You know, when they're children, oftentimes like, oh, you're a big boy.
Yes.
Don't do that. You're a big boy. So we wonder why these men grow up unable to have these emotional responses or connection with people, because as a toddler, they were never taught how to regulate those emotions. And so it could be a very traumatic experience. I read an article and it said that Black children had more PTSD than children growing up in war-stricken countries. And I found that fascinating. Like, how do we have, as a society, more PTSD in our children of color? Why is a community that has war? And it's just the systemic racism and everything in between, trauma, going without, living in food deserts, you know, not having enough. And sometimes that scarcity mindset of not having enough, when you do actually have it available, you do too much with what you've been doing. So you could overeat in situations because you're scared that tomorrow you're not going to have enough.
You're not going to have it, yes.
And so I think it's very important for us to dive deeper into that balance. And we need to find that balance again between our mental health and the way that we respond to food.
Yeah.
So I have some questions for you. So can you tell me tips to deal with grief? And what are types of grief? You said it doesn't have to deal with a death. So can you elaborate on that?
So many types of grief, and understand that grief is when you suffer any type of loss. And so maybe it's that job that you really, really wanted and you've prepared for your interview. I mean, everything is perfect. You have on the perfect outfit. You have researched the company. You know all the information. You are more than qualified. So you just know you got this job.
That's good.
You go for the interview and, you know, they call you back and say, oh, I'm sorry, we have chosen someone else.
If you get a call.
If you get a call, right. Well, that is a loss. So that is a part of grief. We as a society don't recognize it because it's not considered something big. Okay. So, but when you have those things happen on a continual basis, I mean, think about the person who has been fired from a job.
Yeah.
And you've been fired. That hurts. It hurts. But then your friend says, girl, get over it. You know, you can go get another job over here. Oh, okay. So you go, you get another job. And then you get fired several times. That does something to you. That's a loss.
Yeah.
And it's, and it's kind of, a poke to your self-esteem as well.
Yeah.
All of that is considered grief and trauma. The thing is that because we don't recognize it as such, then we don't deal with it the way that it needs to be dealt with. We really need to process it. We really need to figure out, okay, this happened to me. Now, let me figure out how I can, walk through this journey and come out on the other side stronger instead of taking it with me and having it just stored in your brain as a negative experience, because eventually all of those things build up.
They do.
So my tip for those types of things is I tell people all the time, the number one thing is you need to be honest with yourself.
Oh, yeah.
You can lie to me all you want to, but you have to be honest with yourself. Know who you are.
Oh, that's good.
And be honest with the way that you deal with things. There is no right or wrong. No one can tell you you're not doing it right because they're not you. So, the way that I deal with things may be different from the way you deal with things, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different.
That's good.
So knowing yourself, first of all, it will allow you to give yourself some grace. And that's another thing that we don't do.
Yeah.
We don't give ourselves grace.
No, yeah.
You know, God gives us grace every single day. But we are our hardest critic.
Yes.
Because, you know, as a woman and being a mother,
Yeah.
you know, if my child doesn't do the right thing or doesn't say the right thing, or, you know, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just didn't teach her. What did I do wrong? You know, but we have to stop that because we're not perfect. We're not going to get it right all the time. We have to give ourselves grace and be nice to ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the number one tip is be nice to yourself. Give yourself grace.
Yeah.
You know, be honest with yourself. And then understand and realize how you may deal with something. If I used to have a really bad temper. So I learned that my explosions were not working.
Yes.
And number one, it wasn't healthy for me, and it certainly wasn't healthy to the person that I was exploding on.
Yes.
You know, and so I had to be honest with myself that this isn't working.
Yeah.
And it isn't conducive to the situation. I really need to change some things. And so I made a decision and I looked at the whole situation and said, why?
Yeah.
Why are you having these reactions?
Yeah.
And why is it, you know, so volatile? What is going on? And from that, I learned to take a deep breath first. And I think everyone, when you get into a situation that you're really frustrated or you're angry or, you know, something, it doesn't happen the way that you think it should, take a step back, take a deep breath first, and look at the complete situation. Because I am one of belief that when things happen, when people tell me a story, in my mind, I'm listening, but there's your story, there's the other person's story, and then there is the whole truth in the middle, because everyone has their own perception.
Yes. Yes.
And you have to just be honest with yourself and your own perception and say, okay, what is it can I do differently?
Right.
You know, if something triggers you,
Right.
you have to recognize that it triggers you.
Yes.
And then you have to decide to make the change.
Yes. That's true.
You know, change will not happen unless you make the decision.
Further.
So those are just, you know, some of the things that I would say to a person if I were sitting down with someone and they said, I don't know what's going on, but, you know, I'm angry about this and this is, I would say, number one, okay, let's be honest with yourself. Let's figure out, where is this anger coming from?
Right.
You know, and number two, before you respond, let's take a deep breath.
Yes.
And then let's look at the big situation, you know, the big picture, so to speak.
Right.
So, yeah.
I love that. I think becoming more self-aware is actually a gift.
Yeah.
It is a muscle to be worked on and then when appropriate flexed to its ultimate capacity. But it does take doing inventory of where you are, where you would like to be. One of the things that I often do is, how do I want to be remembered? If I die,
That's good.
what will people be saying at my funeral? Will they be saying, "Oh, child, she was hot-headed, she was rude, she was condescending. Every time she opened the door, I hated when she came in the room"? Or will they say, "When I entered into a space, did I make it better by trying to help others and really being engulfed in that spirit of change?" One of my favorite quotes is, "Being the change I want to see," right? I cannot change the world by myself.
Right.
But if I'm able to change me, which in turn helps to mold the environment that I'm functioning in and be able to offer positive value to them, then they're able to go out into the community and offer positive value back out, right? And so I think it's very important for people to understand that our mental health is a crucial aspect of how we function. Through our brain, it tells our body to do things and subconsciously and otherwise. And so it's very important for you or for everyone to just make sure that we keep that at the forefront. And I think sometimes what we notice is that it was never taught. It's not a muscle that we flex often. And so it is uncomfortable to become more introspective, to figure out why.
Right.
Because when we were younger, who sat us down now we have new age parenting.
Yes.
We're asking input from children because we want them to develop a voice.
Yes.
But back then it was a very dictatorship, authoritarian type of parenting style that did not allow the child to express themselves in a safe way. And then now we're all adults learning how to function at that capacity. So in regards to what we do here with the whole weight loss and diabetes and chronic disease management, I tell people I am not everyone's cup of tea, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I may be a little bit too spicy, a little bit not spicy enough, and that's okay.
And that's okay.
You know, like I said in the other episode, date your provider. We need to make sure that we're on the same wavelength. And if there's things that you cannot tell me because you're worried about being judged or otherwise, then we're not a good match. And that's okay. Find your good match. But I tell people, I'm in everybody's business. Because when you come, I need to know what's going on. So we had a client, and she was losing weight amazing. Everything was going well. And in 1 week, she gained 7 pounds.
Okay.
And so I said, what's going on? And she was like, oh, no, I'm good. I said, no. Like, what's really going on?
Right.
How are you feeling? And then came tears, and she mentioned that she was under a lot of stress. So I said, okay, next week when you come in, we're not worried about diet. I need you to go back in that prayer closet. Let's journal and let's figure out why you're feeling this way, process it, give it to the Lord and otherwise, but we need to figure that out. The next week she came back, she had lost all that weight.
Yeah.
So it's very important to see that there is a correlation for how you feel.
Yes.
Inflammation gets triggered. Weight gain happens because it's a dopamine response when we eat certain foods. And so I want you to kind of talk about food addiction. Like, what does that even look like?
So food addiction, it is a real thing.
Yes, it is. It is.
You know, and what really, it saddens me and frustrates me at the same time when people will say, well, you can lose weight, just push back from the table.
Yeah.
And it's not that simple. No. Because if it were, everyone would do it.
Right.
There is a certain thing with food addiction. It's just like drug addiction.
Right.
You know, the food fills a void. And food is so much easier to get addicted to because it's so accessible.
Yeah.
And because no one ever really recognizes it.
Yes.
You know, you see someone who is overweight, or you don't say, oh, they may have a food addiction.
Right.
No, most people will say, oh, they're fat.
Or would they say lazy?
Or they're like, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's,
You know, and that's not right. It's not, you cannot, as they say, judge a book by its cover.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I tell people, I don't know your story.
Yes.
So I cannot help you until I know your story.
Yes.
And you can't judge me because you don't know my story.
Yes.
You know, and so sugar is the number one addictive food.
Yep.
Because it makes you feel good. Mm-hmm. The sweetness, sometimes chips because they're salty. Mm-hmm. And so that is also a food that's very addictive. Mm-hmm. Fried foods, any of those carbohydrates, all of those foods make you feel really good and it tastes good. So, you know, of course, you want to feel good. You want something to taste good, you know, and then you just keep eating it and it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what food addiction is that it just becomes a natural habit of how you deal with stress or how you deal with trauma, how you deal with
happiness.
grief. Sometimes happiness, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, you hear, we just started school and you hear the freshman 15. Well, it's because, you know, they're happy, they're at school, they're excited, you know, and you go to the cafeteria, you have all of this food and all of these choices and, you know, so you eat.
Yeah.
And before you know it, then it becomes something that you have to do. Like, I'm stressed out. You know, I have these tests and I'm stressed. Let me go eat a Snickers because I know that's going to take my mind off of it. It's going to make me feel better. And I'm just going to eat this one. You know, but that's how it starts, right?
It is. So I remember when I started getting into obesity medicine, and I remember the medication Contrave, and I was like, okay, there's naltrexone in it. And I was like, why would they put naltrexone in it? And so as I started studying more, I realized gluten. Now, gluten crosses the blood-brain barrier.
Yes.
And sits on those pain receptors.
Yes.
So naltrexone is actually used for people who have opioid addiction. We give it to them to help them to help curb their appetite for drugs or alcohol or whatever. And so I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So if we are putting this naltrexone on top of those receptors, and it's also helping with food addiction, this is a very real thing that it's not just, oh my gosh, you're just being lazy. This is an addictive process that's happening within the brain.
Yes, within the brain.
And it floods you with dopamine. Because I can't be the only one that when I eat my favorite food, my hair is flying in the wind. I am dancing. I am singing. I am getting into that food. It is so good. I can't be the only one. If you will admit with me, I cannot.
Yes.
But it's that flood of dopamine that goes throughout your body that causes you to feel good. And if you're doing it in a response to feeling bad, feeling good, feeling sad, or whatever, you've now linked a cause and effect.
Yes.
And so your brain realizes, I can make you feel this again. So when that feeling comes up of stress, cortisol levels, it notices a pattern. It's like, ooh. Your brain's like, I know what to do. I got just the thing.
I got you.
Let's get into that pose.
Yes.
Let's sing and dance again and get it going. What I also found interesting is that there was a study that was done on mice. And they got the mice addicted to hardcore drugs, heroin, crack, all these things, right? And they put them in a maze, and the mice will always find those drugs. Then they introduced those same mice to sugar. They put them in that maze, and the mice, they did not go to the hardcore drugs anymore. They went to the sugar. And some of them actually died because they forgot to drink water. So I found that very interesting. So there is an addiction process that's happening. And so we need to stop using a one-size-fits-all model approach to weight loss. It's not just exercise and diet and you're going to be okay.
No.
There's a third piece, fourth piece. There's a holistic approach that you need therapy.
You need therapy.
Because if we got to that capacity, there's something that's a root to it that requires a holistic approach.
Yes. And, you know, let's be clear. Therapy does not mean that you're crazy or that you have issues or that, you know, it doesn't mean any of those things because, you know, we all need somebody.
Yes.
I mean, you know, let's be honest. Just, I'm sure just about everybody has a best friend.
Yes.
So you have your best friend that when you have issues, you go to that friend. And what do? You're just like spilling and you're venting. You're just telling everything, you know? And you just need to get it out.
You just sort of get it out.
And once you get it out, you feel better.
Yeah.
And that's really all therapy is about. It's about making you feel better, but we're also giving you tools on how to deal with whatever it is that you just vomited on me with. So, instead of, because, now your best friend,
Yeah.
that's your homegirl. She's supposed to agree with everything you say, oh, girl, I'm upset because this I went to Walmart and they did this and that. And you're supposed to agree with me. Like, oh, I can't believe it.
Yes.
No, your therapist.
Should we have gone there?
Your therapist is going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And yes, Tammy, you know what? That person probably was incorrect. But what could you have done differently?
Yes. Because I'm the manager of me.
Because you're the manager of you.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to just talk you through it. We're not here to, say you have to do this.
Right.
You should do this.
Right.
I need you to do this.
Right.
None of those things. We are going to help you process how you feel that it's best to work out whatever that situation is going on with you.
Yes.
Because everyone is different.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a one size fits all.
Yeah.
For some people, touch therapy works wonders.
Mm-hmm.
For other people, touch therapy is traumatic. So somatic therapy is much better. They'd rather, talk something out.
Mm-hmm.
For other people, there's a therapy that we use exercise, basically, with that type of therapy. And so we just have to figure out what is going to work with you.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So, guys, I hope that you really enjoyed this candid conversation about what mental health has to do with your overall health. I mean, after all, this is your command center.
Yes.
And from there, everything flows. So we definitely need to be diligent in how we feed our brain, how we nurture our brain, and how we interact with others, and being more self-aware so that we can make better choices. So, Belyne, how can they get in touch with you? How can they make an appointment? What can we do to get our mental health together?
Yes. So you all can reach out to the Lure Health and Wellness. Sign right back there. We are located here in DeSoto. We can get you set up for an appointment, for a consultation, just to sit and talk and see what it is that the person may need.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you, just like we were talking about, each person is different. And you were saying that sometimes you're not people's cup of tea. I feel that same way. Yeah. Sometimes, I may not be your cup of tea, and I'm okay with that. That's okay. But I do have friends who are, in the business, and they do different things, and I can refer you out.
Yeah.
So, but just come in is the first thing, is to come in so that we can figure it out.
So you guys are making calls already?
That's awesome. Let's go.
You're making calls already, but honestly, I'm just so glad that you spent some time with us today. Yes. Hopefully there was something that was said that will arm you with the tools that you need to become happy, healthy, and whole. We'll see you later at LaLore.
Be kind to yourself.
Yeah. Bye.